Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good evening. Um, I'll just take a minute to introduce myself and the company, and then I think we can go on towards today's topic, which I believe is a very relevant one given the uncertain times that we are actually still living in. Instaveritas was started almost a decade ago by smHRt and I, and we felt that there was a big untapped opportunity in the background screening space. Today, now, almost 10 years later, from a two-person company, we're almost 300 people strong, and we work with some of the largest names, not only in India but globally, who entrust us with ensuring that they make better hiring decisions and ensuring they actually make safer hiring decisions. So what I'm going to do now is actually just share my screen, and we can probably go through today's topic. And obviously, at any point, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to stop and ask what you want to. So VUCA as an acronym is not something that maybe everyone's heard of, but the impact of it is felt by us not only in our personal, but especially in our professional lives as well. VUCA essentially stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, these are extremely different aspects which cater to different aspects of risk that we deal with organizationally. They're also certainly linked with one another. And VUCA as a concept impacts businesses in all different fields. It impacts your finance, it impacts your operations, it impacts your budgeting. What I'm here to talk about today is the area of expertise that we are in, which is how it impacts your recruitment process and the role that background screening can play within it. Now, today, the first thing that we actually before we need to understand is why companies today run background checks. If our entire motto or our entire company is built around three aspects. In fact, it's called KYE, KYV, and KYA. KYE is know your employees. Today, we know very little about the people that we're actually hiring, right? We take information, data at face value. Often, more often than not, we actually collect hard copies of CVs, hard copies of Aadhaar cards, pay slips, but no one, as a percentage, the number of companies that are actually cross-verifying whether that data is actually accurate or not is still minimal. So the entire purpose of running a background check is to be able to authenticate factually that the information that someone is providing is in fact accurate and is in fact true. So the reasons why a company run a background check are multifold. First is obviously you mitigate the risk of a bad hire. We'll get into a little more details about what the cost of a bad hire is. More importantly, you're also protecting your brand and reputation. Today, there are events that happen that can overnight destroy a company's brand. You've obviously heard of bank frauds that happen where employees have gone and swindled off millions of dollars. It puts a bank's reputation at stake. If you are part of, say, a taxi aggregator company, if a driver conducts any, if there's an incident of assault or theft, automatically it's in front page news. So we have to be very careful about the people, not only that we're hiring, but also the networks that we're building to ensure that the associations or interactions between our employees or our representatives and our customers are also completely screened and completely safe. The reason why companies are running background checks in India is because, as you can see in the statistics, almost 88% of companies in India have reported fraud. And these numbers are on the rise. I'll just shed light on, what is the real cost of a bad hire, or what I was actually saying earlier in a little more detail. You take any person that you're hiring, and as people in HR, I'm sure that you're actually aware of the entire painful process of not only finding a candidate, but actually onboarding them and getting them through the process. If you take a typical example of someone, say you're hiring at a 50,000 rupee salary, first things first, you're either using an internal HR team, or you're recruiting, or you're using a recruitment platform or an agency to hire people. Typically, you're paying between 8% and 10% of their annual salary. That's a cost that you're incurring. Then comes on to the entire time, effort, and money that is spent in interviewing a candidate. Most organizations follow a rigorous process of screening. So that means you're actually spending 3 or 4 rounds of interviews just at either an HR or a senior management level. All of this time is actually an opportunity cost where people are putting in, time and effort to be able to screen candidates. Once this entire process is completed, which typically says a 3 to 4 week process, you're also ongoing costs regarding onboarding an individual, getting the compliances in place, getting the insurances, PF accounts, etc. That is just the first half about finding someone. After that, you actually are then investing in that same person, their training. Typically, I mean, even if you take our company, for example, we invest at least 3 to 4 months in some of our roles where we're actually training intensively. Only when you've actually trained them are they job ready. After they're job ready, and mostly as Indian companies, we tend to give people at least a certain amount of runway before we identify whether they are or taking a harsh decision to firing him. Now, what happens in this entire gap is the fact that if a person has just fraudulently given any information which is completely fake, which would make them unqualified for the job, they could have been they would have been screened out the minute you're interviewing them. But in our case, we are actually hiring them. We are hiring them, onboarding them, training them, letting them work with us for 6 months, and then actually having to face the cost of even replacing them. So if you think on an average, a background check, if you're doing core components of, say, an identity, address, criminal, education, employment check, typically costs, say, about 2,000 rupees. But the cost of a bad hire can range anywhere, between 4 to 6 lakhs of rupees, because there are multiple factors, which is not even factoring in the hidden or intangible risks that are there. If you hire someone that is unscreened, say assault someone in your office, what's the reputational damage that can cause? What is the legal consequences of hiring someone who is unvetted or unscreened and has a past history of fraud or past history of violence, and you're letting them into a workplace? So what I put aside, even if you're seeing on the left side, is just financial impact, but more damaging could be the intangible costs that are associated with any of these hires. Moving on to what the relevance of where we are at today. Most of us in our lifetime have not seen have not seen a drastic event like COVID. It's fundamentally changed the way we work. I mean, for generations, you talk about our fathers and our grandfathers and the time before, we've all gone to somewhere to work. But today, over the last 3 years, now we've moved into something which is either completely remote or hybrid, which creates its own challenges from a recruitment process, right? We are hiring people and expanding and becoming 500,000 person companies with employees we maybe meet once a quarter, or some that we never meet at all, right? So there's a big, the debate regarding work from home or work from office is another one, which, I mean, it's not something that I want to dwell into. But the reality is that a remote working environment also comes with its own risks, right? Earlier, you had someone sitting next to you, someone physically next to you, so you're able to kind of monitor what it is that they're doing. There is a certain amount of social and physical interaction. Today, there's a high risk of dual employment. You would have seen recent news across many companies about their moonlighting policies and their harsh stances against them. So if you have someone working from home, you have no idea whether for 6 hours they're working for you or for 6 hours they're working somewhere else, whether they're working for the competition. So, we introduce, because they're high level of risk, we've also introduced checks which enable us to tackle them. Like, you can check through income tax records, you can check through provident fund records. If on consent, bank statement analysis can be done. Yes, if fraud is at a level where it can be penetrated through other factors, but at a base level, these checks will be able to cover whether someone is working within two companies at the same time or not. The second other impact, which I feel also has fundamentally changed the way how news is spread across the industry. Earlier, if there was, say, an adverse event which happened with an unchecked individual, where you hired someone and you could have identified that they had a past blotch on their CV or a past case of fraudulent employment, or they were absconding from their previous company, you would be able to identify and mitigate that risk. But in today's day and world, if you actually let someone through your doors, which could have been prevented, the impact, especially with the advent of social media, is huge. It'll be all over LinkedIn within a matter of hours. It'll be all over the news in a matter of hours. It'll be in Twitter and Instagram. So the reputational damage that avoidable risks actually create is multifold today as compared to what it was, say, a decade ago. Third, there's an increased amount of compliance requirements. So if you look at even sectorally or regulatory requirements for each sectors have become different. You take, for example, if you're going for an ISO certification today, it is required by as part of the ISO certificate that all your employees have to have a baseline verification of at least their identity, education, employment, and previous work history. And as well as reference checks. So again, now if you're working with banks or you're working with government organizations, again, each one of them will have separate benchmarks as to what is the bare level of screening that is required. This is where an unpredictable, volatile environment also comes in, and also kind of stresses upon the need for continuous screening, not just at a one-time level. The last point is regarding how fraud has become a little more sophisticated as it was than it was earlier. Fraud sophistication is, in essence, people are being able to impersonate identity. Give you an example of, say, an Ola and Uber. You can onboard a driver with a certain identity, but then a third person can be driving your car. So they've innovated to be able to kind of build in facial recognition technology every time or at random intervals when a driver is driving a car to ensure that there's no impersonation fraud. Moonlighting is something that no one talked about, again, since about a year and a half ago. So, stronger checks and balances are required to be able to tackle new age problems of recruitment that we're facing today. Coming on to the thing with background screening is the fact that it is relevant irrespective of size, scale, industry, location, and what level you are in the organization. This is whether you're a three-person company and hiring your fourth person, or you're a 30,000 person company hiring someone. The need for background screening is still the same. In fact, most companies, try and put this off for a later stage where they believe that they're, when they have a larger team or larger functions. In fact, it is the most critical at the early stages of the company, because if you encounter people with fraudulent credentials when you are just a, young company with under 10 people, the impact that those could have, especially in a young early stage company, is a lot more as compared to, even a large mid-sized company. So it's important to note that, background screening is also sector agnostic. As Instaveritas, we work across the spectrum. So, for example, firstly, a large percentage of your unicorns that exist today work with us. So your Swiggy, Uber, companies like Zepto, Walmart, Flipkart, all are clients of ours. So if you look at, even if you look at the delivery and logistics space, for each vertical, it's important to understand why people are doing background checks. Airports, again, you can understand that this is a high security zone. So if you're working in Delhi Airport or Hyderabad Airport or Goa Airport, you have to be screened by us. In delivery and logistics, we work with not only food delivery companies, but also intercity logistic companies like BlackBuck and Porter. For infrastructure and industry, we work with companies like Tata and Shapoorji Pallonji. Healthcare is another big vertical for us, where we're working with a number of not just hospitals, but also healthcare at home providers. A few other points that I want to actually bring us, which are pressing, which I believe are off, and why I'm bringing this up is because they're often ignored. One point is that background screening, yes, is sector agnostic. Secondly, it's also applicable to all layers and levels of the organization. People often focus on only conducting checks at their highest level. Oh, I'm hiring a director, or I'm hiring a CEO. Let me do a background check on them. Those guys are the guys you're checking thoroughly in any case. They're going through multiple rounds of interviews. They're coming through references. You're probably getting a large Big Four firm to even look into their credentials before. So those are being checked. But the reality is where fraud will happen and where the impact and the risk actually resides is the rest of the organization, which in a large portion of companies I've seen still go unverified. So whether you're a janitor in a company, whether you're support staff, whether you're mid-level management, there needs to be a predefined level of screening and check that actually can be done at each level. So obviously the level of check can be customized. We do this all the time, in terms of, okay, baseline fresher hiring, we'll only do their education and employment. The higher you're up you go, you can, include credit checks, professional reference checks, employment checks, their educations, the adverse media. We even do market intelligence when it comes to very senior hires. So the point I'm trying to make is that background screening should not be level or organizational level specific. It should be organizational wide. The second thing, and this is extremely applicable for companies that operate, in the gig economy, in especially the delivery and logistics space, or also anywhere where you have company representatives that are not directly on your payroll. The often misconception is that if a person is off-roll, like it's called off-roll, or not on, the company's direct payroll, the risk that that person carries is passed on to that third-party vendor. The reality is that that's not true. Now, today, a Tata Sky guy coming to my house to fix the internet. Now he may be off roll or maybe on roll, but if the person comes in and steals something in my house, or poses some danger to my family, no one is ever going to look at whether the payroll structure defines the risk that that person carries. So the point I'm trying to make is that irrespective of the payroll structure of that individual, it is imperative that anyone that is representing your brand, your company, should go through the same process. The third point is a new innovation which is picked up from some of the leading best practices in the West. Which is the concept of continuous screening. We usually only do screening at the time of someone joining, which is good for certain checks, like for example, their education or their previous employment. But there's certain factors or there's certain checks that need to be done in regular time intervals. For example, say you're a taxi company or you're a logistics company, your driving license could be suspended. That could be flagged later. You could run litigation check. That means civil litigation or criminal litigation checks every 6 months. Again, because you at the time of joining, a person may not have a court case against them, but they could 6 months later or 1 year later. Credit checks could be done, at regular time intervals as well. So the importance of continuous screening is also important in a volatile, uncertain market that we actually operate in today. If anyone remembers, back in 2014, there was an unfortunate rape incident with one of the largest taxi aggregators, which put into question the need for background checks at a level which was not really thought of in India. Our entire focus had always been, when we started, was to work with the on-demand industry, is to work with networks. So even if you take whether it's a company like Urban Company, it's a network of service providers. If you take a company like Uber, it's a network of drivers. Swiggy is a network of delivery agents. These are not necessarily people that are on your payrolls, but are people that represent you nonetheless. All of these individuals are interacting with your customers at close proximity, either in their homes or very near their homes or at their doorstep. So it becomes critical to ensure that there is a thorough level of screening that is done on each one of these before any of these interactions happen. Typically, when we look at the gig and shared economy, so that kind of overlaps with blue and gray collar screening. So typically what we do is ensuring an identity check. That means a person is who they say they are, address to ensure traceability. And third is criminality. I'll get into more detail with respect to criminality, because that I believe for especially the blue and gray collar market is the most important check that needs to be done today. So like I was saying earlier, identity, where if you're looking at the blue and gray collar market, and this covers pretty much all your delivery stuff, your taxi stuff, your facility management, tenants that needs to be verified, which will have the same level of checks, factory workers. These are the three most important checks, which what we call as a baseline check. It comes under an umbrella that we brand as InstaBlue. Identity verification, again, we've built a lot of technologies to support fast and instant identity verification. I mean, this happens in a matter of milliseconds. So you upload an ID, our OCR technology pretty much reads all the data instantly. We'll give you we are linked up with the government databases, and we can throw a result to you pretty much instantaneously. Further, we also have technologies that actually facilitate face recognition and face match. So this is a key criteria, key check also to eliminate any form of impersonation fraud. Address, like I spoke of earlier, address and physical field visits serve two purposes. One is the obvious one, that it ensures traceability to a person's address. So that means you know where someone is living. We collect their photographs, how GPS coordinates, documents of the people that we meet, references of people that we actually meet. And the second and the other reason why it's actually critical is that it acts as a deterrent. When individuals know that someone has visited their home physically and met with their individuals and collected proof of that visit, it acts as a deterrent to crime, because from an individual's perspective, you know that someone has come and physically checked where I live. So you know that that creates some sort of fear, which is important as well. Third and the most important check is the criminal records check in India. This is our flagship product, which is where we differentiate ourselves. We've done, I mean, we do millions of checks every year for the criminal records check, and our entire piece is a two-tiered approach. One is a heavy reliance on technology to be able to search across 25,000 databases, to be able to search concurrently, and to be able to also develop technologies that are specific to the Indian databases and Indian market. A name like Nikhil, you could find a court record is spelled as Nickil, Nikhel, Nikil, Nikhil. How would you know whether it's the same person or not? It's unlike the West. It's not like your Aadhaar card or PAN card is linked every time you have a with your prison record system. So it's a complicated level of check which requires a deep level of search as well as analytical technology, and all of this has to be powered by a huge level of human intelligence. There are a number of companies that can come and instantly tell you, okay, we can tell you instantly whether someone is a criminal or not. In most circumstances, that will not give you an accurate result. There is a dependence and there is the need for a human layer of intelligence, which, given the data and infrastructure that we have, we cannot eliminate as it is today. 5 years later, 10 years later, data improves, linkages happen. Yes, there can be automation, but as where we stand today, we cannot eradicate the need for a human layer of intelligence in this check at the moment. Apart from criminality, we also offer police verification across the country. Now, criminality and police verification, one would ideally assume that police verification should cover everything. The reality is police verification in India is a more cumbersome process. Though it is important from a compliance perspective, usually companies do both, to do the police verification as an insurance document or as a document to ensure compliance with government authorities where it's required, and the criminal record check as a fast instant check, which is more from a safety and security perspective. Apart from what we spoke of right now covers your blue and gray collar market, there's also what we know as traditionally Insta-white, or what we know as fraud at organizational or at a corporate level. Typically, what we find in terms of fraud or the checks that we do here are their education verification. So usually their highest education records, their past employment records. Now, employment checks are critical because you are basing your hiring decisions based on what a person did in their past. So when we do an employment check, we actually check from the HRs of their previous company, their date of joining, their date of relieving, their salary, their department designation, status of their exit formalities. And we get a lot of informative feedback, which helps in better kind of decision in making for the next employer. You'll find cases in which people have forged their pay slips. You'll find cases where people have forged their tenure. You'll find cases where people give very specific comments about the poor performance in their previous companies, or even more subtle cases where you're looking at loan pending, amounts of low advances that were given and never repaid. The person was absconding. So all of this helps you. As a company, what we do is we give you the facts for you to make a better decision. Tomorrow, you may say, okay, the person, was absconding from their previous company, but that does not matter to me. That is an internal decision. But what the important aspect of doing these checks is that you have all your facts and information in front of you when you make your onboarding decisions, rather than have to rely on something happening later and then react to it. India, usually as a race, we are actually more reactive in nature as compared to preventative. We tend to let a problem happen and then find a solution to the problem, rather than build a bridge and build a prevention to that problem in the first place. So that's what screening does. That's what employment screening does, is to be able to build a layer of screening before that problem happens. So sorry, just to come back to the Instaveritas, we in addition to education and employment, we also do litigation checks, which covers your civil and criminal checks, and we also do professional references, from their past and current employers as well. Additionally, at an enhanced level, what is important is you can also get into someone, and some of these are on consent. So for credit history, you need the consent of that individual. So he'll be able to get what is their credit worthiness in the market. Global database checks are also relevant, especially if you're hiring people from international backgrounds or people who have worked in multiple countries in the past. Adverse media checks also help identify if there's any negative press surrounding that individual that you have hired or that you're planning to hire. One of the main reasons why we're also having this conversation today was the fact that we are now launching the entire integration piece with Pocket HRMS. In fact, and I often have this conversation with a lot of my clients, is the fact that we spend almost the same amount of time coordinating for background checks in terms of data documents, data collection, reporting, all of that, as compared, rather than focus on the background screening part itself. Integrations like that we have with Pocket HRMS, what it enables us to do is to be able to seamlessly create for a better, more streamlined background screening experience. I've just listed down a few of the things that make a key difference. Today, if your background screening is managed on multiple platforms, say your HRIS is X and your background screening vendor is Y, that means your HR team is constantly interacting with not only two teams, but also two platforms at the same time. Obviously, this consumes a lot of time and effort to be able to manage this. So an integration allows you to actually manage the entire background screening experience in a single platform, which is more efficient, not only for the background screening provider, but for the company, and just as importantly for the candidate itself. A candidate today would have to possibly upload, they have to give hard copies of their documents. They might have to upload it in HRISA. They might have to give it to a background screening company. This dampens the experience of the candidate. So what we also aim to do with this integration is to have only a one-time process where a candidate has to submit all that information and documents at a single place, and even from their perspective, this exercise is not repeated. So in essence, it makes for a better candidate experience. Third, which is obviously linked up with the first two, is that if you're creating for a more streamlined process, it reduces the amount of HR resources, it reduces the amount of HR time, and at the end of the day, effort and money that is invested in the BGV process. And the net result of this entire automation is that you will have faster reports, you'll have faster reporting, you'll have faster decision making. If you're looking forward, the future of background screening is to ensure that it is integrated with HRISs like Pocket HRMS to ensure a smoother experience for all your stakeholders that are part of this process. Selection criteria for BGV vendors. Ideally, I would just put our logo, but given the fact that I have to be a little more diplomatic, what the key factors that we need to consider is that one is that you need to ensure that whoever you're choosing has a partner-led approach. That means they're actually working with you as a partner to understand the risks that are there in your organization and advise you as to what are the different screening frameworks that are best suited for your organizational structure as well as the sector that you're in. Just trying to sell every check for every sector does not make sense. Tomorrow, if you say I'm going to do, why don't you do a global database check for a person who's working, in as a peon? It's just an extraction process. But if you're going to tailor each check, understanding an organizational structure, understanding the exposed risk for each organization, that is important from there's important inputs that need to be provided by any partner that you shortlist. The second aspect is the comprehensiveness of the report, and this goes hand in hand with the process and methodology. The same check can be done in multiple ways. A criminal record check can be done by a lawyer sitting on the road. A criminal record check can be done by a detailed surface level check, which is restricted to only one city and one police station, or it can be done in a comprehensive way where you're searching records and combing through the records of the entire country. So you need to be able to understand the process that each company is adopting, and being able to then make a decision after understanding the process, and obviously having a cost benefit analysis to put weightage to quality as compared to just cost. Third, as in any other business, is client support. I mean, we invested in our people to ensure that our clients get the support that they need at any point that they need it. Even though you can have, you can have fancy dashboards, and you can have API integrations, and you can have instant reporting and automatic triggers, all of that does not replace a dedicated team that you need to pick up the phone and answer any query, answer any questions, address any questions that your clients could have. So that support layer is important for any organization that you choose. And lastly, background screening is a time-sensitive process. The person needs to be screened before they join. So obviously turnaround time is a big consideration when you're choosing your partners.